Welcome back. So today I've decided to go a different route for this video, and I'd love to dive into my top 5 thriller/horror films. I'll do a little insight into each of them and we'll chat about my favourite aspects of each one. So here we go. And warning, there may be spoilers. So my first one is Get Out. This is a pretty predictable one, as I'm sure it's various other people's favourites. I'd have to say this is by far my favourite film by Peele. I saw Nope a few years ago, but I found it slightly disappointing in comparison to Get Out. Get Out has a mixture of political and social constructs that creates such an intense movie that changes at pretty much every single moment. I've watched it so many times now that I can even find it comical at times, like the creepy smile from Georgina and the almost Mario-esque run by Walter makes me giggle as I've watched it so many times, and I seriously cannot take their behaviour for real. However, this doesn't take away from the message Peele is trying to convey. It was released in 2017 and it has a unique premise and powerful social commentary. Revisiting it now, I'm even more impressed by how the film manages to shine a light on deep-rooted prejudices. My favourite aspect of this film would have to be something slightly stupid and weird now that I consider it, and that would have to be the Run Rabbit motif. At this point, this song gives me an excuse to smirk at the dark times as it so starkly contrasts with the themes seen in this film, but it does really have such a deeper meaning. The contrast between the jaunty, up-tempo song from the late 1930s and the horrific violence taking place in the scene is, quite frankly, disturbing to say the least. It's seen in the opening scene and then later when Chris takes Jeremy's car to escape the Armitage estate. We realise that it was Jeremy who kidnapped Andre because the car is playing Run Rabbit Run. It can also stand as a motif that has multiple meanings. The original song was released in World War II times and stood as a political and social standpoint against violence and the race and religion-based violence the Nazis were implementing. In using this song, Peele directly references the idea of race-based violence and segregation within the past and modern-day society. The period of this song can also make reference to Jesse Owens, who is an athlete from the same time period, who is again referenced throughout this film as Walter's competition within the race. So my second one is Speak No Evil, and this is my most recent horror film watch, and I saw it on the plane and I felt so bad for everyone sitting around me because like I felt the eyes on my screen, like especially when like the blood and gore was happening. I was like, I promise I'm not weird, like I just like these films and James McAvoy is cool, so whatever. I did find though that it took a little bit too long to get to the crux of the story, but when it did, it was quite frankly insane. And James McAvoy's interpretation of Patty was a confusing mixture of sexiness and scariness, and it quite literally had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. In watching this film, I also felt a relief of seeing something new, and I loved that it was heavily inspired by the Danish 2022 version of this film that I had previously watched, in which I loved the cinematography and storyline. And I have to say, the original definitely needs more credit in terms of this whole entire film. The main thing I enjoyed in this film were the cinematographer's homage to various iconic horror movie scenes. The main one being the Here's Johnny shot from The Shining, in which McAvoy pretty much encapsulates the same expression, just with 10 times as much sweat on his forehead. Additionally, what makes James McAvoy's Speak No Evil performance so great, it sort of establishes this charismatic villain that you are initially attracted to and like you want to be friends with, but then that's so shifted later in the film, and that's something that I really, really appreciate about this film. Okay, this next one, The Invisible Man, I don't know if I'm just like not keeping up or whatever, but I swear I never hear people talking about this one. And the thing that makes this film so apparent to me is the cultural and social references to the issues of like not believing the victim when it comes to domestic violence. Elizabeth Moss's performance captures the deep emotional strain her character Celia is experiencing. And although this film does grapple with some hard-to-see themes, its ending makes it all the more worthwhile. I'd say the cinematography and extremely long-winded shots are my favourite aspects of this film. The pacing of various scenes creates this feeling of unease that places the audience in this chaotic state of mind that encourages them to feel sympathetic towards Celia's experiences. The empty mise-en-scène also leaves the audience wondering, is Adrian there or is he not? The movie's title takes on a double meaning as well, highlighting the invisible threats that are still haunting victims of domestic violence. I also love that it is such a good horror film in terms of its conventions. It's continuously suspenseful, nicely paced, with rising stakes, and it earns every jump scare. Most of the scares are pretty much reminiscent of the classic Haunted House films. Alright, next one is Alien. This is more of a thriller, but I'd also kind of consider it a horror. Now, I've already made a whole video on this film, so I'll leave a link in the description to it so you can go watch that. But I'll keep this one short and sweet so I don't repeat what I've already said. But if you were to ask me to say the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Alien, I'd probably just say Sigourney Weaver. But it's not just her performance that stands out, but the empowerment and reclaiming of female autonomy present in a time in which women were still seen as lesser to that of men. My favourite fun fact about the initial writing and concepts of this film is that Scott had never assigned a gender to Ripley, and this kind of enhances his carefree approach to his depiction of a hero in this film. And it wasn't actually until the casting of Ripley that was given to Sigourney Weaver that it was decided that she would be a female character. And honestly, that perspective is what makes this film so great. Like, it wasn't written for either gender, like, it was in a mind that anyone could be this escapee and sort of have this powerful moment, and that being a woman in this film is so great. My final one is Ma, and this one is one of those films that's low-key really cringe and is slightly bad that it ends up just being a really good film to watch. Like, I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but have you ever watched a film that is so bad that it's so good? Like, a lot of the Amy Poehler movies, a lot of, like, not Pitch Perfect, but like the cringing, like, 2012 films that are so bad that they're so good. Like, they're not bad, like, the storylines are good, but, like, in terms of, like, nerd film, like, cinematography and all that, it's not all that. This is pretty good, like, in terms of cinematography and stuff, but it's, like, very teen-based, and it's very, like, ooh, I don't know if I'm gonna like this, but I actually ended up really enjoying it. But the storyline is just so strange. Like, why are these kids just accepting about having a party at this random woman's house? Like, what are you thinking? Anyways, I'd have to say my favourite aspect of this film would be the symbolism of Ma's house itself. Ma's house and the group's interaction serve to reinforce the themes of isolation, societal prejudice, and the consequences of anger. And then later in the film, when we see the mask and then the fire, this ultimately stands as a representation of Ma's hidden identity and the true destructive nature that becomes such a great risk to the teens in the film. And I sort of love this implicit communication through symbols, mise-en-scène and all that, and it's something that makes this film pretty enjoyable, I'd say. So those are my top 5 horror films. There definitely are other ones that I really enjoy, but these ones are kind of a mixture of good, bad, and sort of different sort of genres. Like, obviously Get Out's more psychological horror, Invisible Man's more that jump scare stuff, Alien's more thriller, Mars a little bit more downplayed, and then Speak No Evil's just basically psychotic. So yeah, that's all I have for today. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your favourite horror movies in the comments, because I always love a good horror movie recommendation. So yeah, come back next week for more. Let me know any recommendations of films you want to hear about. So yeah, hope you have a nice day. Thanks for watching.